If you saw a video called "At 59, Rick Harrison confirms his son life sentence is true," it caused a huge stir on the internet. People were shocked and worried, and they were looking for answers about the beloved Pawn Stars frontman who built a TV empire and is now facing life in prison. The headline suggested a shocking fall, but nothing is what it seems. Today, we're going to look into the truth about Rick Harrison, the terrible personal tragedy he's facing, and the false tales meant to get you to click on them. I'm going to tell you the real story that the major news outlets aren't telling you, and this is important for all of us. Stay with me because what I'm about to say will change everything you thought you knew about the Harrison family history. To understand Rick Harrison's current situation, we need to go back to the beginning. Born in Lexington, North Carolina on March 22, 1965, Richard Benjamin Harrison Jr., better known as the Old Man, and Joanne Rue Harrison have a son named Rick. Rick's family moved to San Diego, California when he was 2 years old. That's where his insatiable thirst for knowledge began to grow. Unlike most kids his age, Rick wasn't interested in toys or games, but in books, especially ones about history and the Royal Navy. This early love of historical artifacts would later become the basis of his career and TV persona. Rick only went to Taft Middle School for a short time before dropping out of regular learning in the 10th grade. Rick was having a hard time in school, but his desire to run his own businesses instead of going to school set him on the path to unprecedented success. 1981 was an important year in the history of the Harrison family. Rick and his father opened the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in Las Vegas, Nevada. What started out as a small family business quickly became known all over the area. The Harrisons became experts at identifying and figuring out the value of a huge range of things, from historical objects to jewelry, guns to collectibles from cars. For almost 30 years, the shop was pretty unknown, but in 2009, a single phone call from TV makers changed everything. They had an idea that would change their lives forever. Pawn Stars, which debuted on the History Channel, showed people the interesting world of pawn shops and historical artifacts. The show became a huge hit overnight, launching Rick, his father, his son Corey, and family friend Austin Chumley Russell to international fame. Suddenly, their small local business was drawing tourists from all over the world, and their knowledge was being shown in millions of homes. The success of Pawn Stars created a cultural phenomenon, and the Harrison family used it to grow their businesses. The pawn shop became a tourist destination, and merchandise sales and spin-off opportunities multiplied. Own unique style, he was a fan favorite because he was smart about business and knew a lot about history. His catchphrases and ways of negotiating became famous, and the Harrison family name became linked to experts in identifying and valuing things, but not in front of the cameras or in the press. Rick had to deal with some big problems in his life. The stresses of fame, business growth, and family relationships led to natural tensions. In 2022, Rick's mother, Joanne, made these private problems public. In a lawsuit made against her son Rick Harrison, who was 81 years old at the time, Harrison said that Rick had wrongfully taken over ownership of the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop after Harrison recovered from a serious illness that put her in a coma. Joanne said that Rick took advantage of the fact that she couldn't work while she was sick to get more financial power. Rick strongly disputed these claims, saying that all business dealings were done in an honest and legal way. Eventually, the parties came to an agreement, reached a settlement outside of court, and Rick was never charged with a crime. While the resolution ended the legal case, the public nature of the fight probably strained family ties that had seemed unbreakable on TV. As if legal battles weren't hard enough already, in January 2024, Rick's son, Adam Harrison, died of an overdose while he was 39 years old. Unlike his brother Corey, Rick was devastated by this loss. Adam had mostly stayed out of the Pawn Stars' attention, choosing to live a quieter life. But his battle with addiction was a painful truth that his family had to face behind closed doors after this unthinkable loss. Rick has been very open about his sadness in interviews where he's talked about how painful it is to lose a child and how the family worked to help Adam get over his addiction. That call you never want to get. In a very emotional conversation, Rick said, "You second guess everything. Could I have done more? Should I have tried something? Not the same." There's nothing worse than losing a child, and the way he talked about this tragedy made a connection with many families who have been touched by addiction. This brought attention to the terrible effects of the opioid crisis. Rick went from being a TV personality and businessman to speaking out against the fentanyl epidemic that is sweeping across America after Adam's death. He has used his fame to call for stricter border policies to stop drug trafficking, calling fentanyl poison instead of a drug, and supporting stricter laws against drug trafficking, for harsh punishments for those who distribute it. This isn't about politics, as Rick has said, it's about saving lives. When someone you love dies from this poison, you understand how quickly we need real solutions, even though these are very hard personal issues. In March 2025, Rick keeps going with his personal and work life, even though there are rumors going around about his legal situation. In Chile, Rick proposed to Angie Palushkin while on a romantic trip. The two had been seeing each other for a while before they got engaged. They made this promise, which was a bright spot in what had been a tough time for the Harrison family. At work, Rick has been trying new things, and in February 2025, he announced that Pawn Stars would be taking a break for good after more than 15 years and hundreds of episodes. Rick hinted that he might be interested in making what he called Pawn Stars 2, which could be a new take on the model that made him famous. This news came at the same time that his son Corey quit the whole family business. Corey has moved to Tulum, Mexico, and is starting a BBQ business. This is a big change from the pawn shop business that he had for a long time. These real events in Rick's life make the false rumors that he is facing life in prison even more disturbing. The clickbait video that started these reports was meant to take advantage of the real tragedy in the Harrison family by making up a shocking criminal story. As of April 2025, Rick Harrison is not in jail at all and is now free to run the gold and silver pawn shop and make public appearances. In fact, he was a special guest at the 44th Annual Home and Garden Show at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut not long ago, where he met friends and talked about his life. The spread of this kind of false information shows a worrying trend in our digital world. People who make clickbait know that people are most interested in stories that make them feel something, and seeing a well-known person supposedly facing serious charges is one of the strongest emotional triggers there is. Charges of crime. The people who make this kind of content know that a lot of people will react to thumbnails and headlines without checking out the information. By posting and sharing, they spread false information before they find out the truth. When this pattern meets real tragedy, it's especially bad. The Harrison family's real problems with addiction, loss, and grief are turned into clickbait and skewed for attention. Rick has been very honest about his son's death from fentanyl overdose by using his fame to bring attention to the problem. This real pain is turned into false criminal accusations against Rick by the advertising machine. Dealing with these false rumors adds another layer of difficulty to a time that is already hard. Imagine grieving the loss of a child while also having to deal with false claims about your legal status. This kind of public misinformation can have a big effect on a person's mental health, affecting not only that person, but also their whole family. Network for business. So why does this matter for more than just one famous family? Because spreading false information has real-world effects. It makes people less likely to believe reliable news sources, which makes it harder to tell the difference between fact and fiction as people get used to hearing sensationalized lies. Those who are dealing with problems like the Harrison family have found it harder to think critically about the news. This is especially true when these sensitive issues are brought up. Being used for hits can be very bad. What the real Rick Harrison story is like is less exciting and deeper than the hype made it sound. You think he's not a criminal facing life in prison, but a father, grieving a terrible loss and trying to carry on his family's traditions. You think he's a businessman, adjusting to new chances and changing market conditions. He's a champion who uses his fame to bring attention to how terrible fentanyl is, just like Rick continues to as he goes through these personal and professional changes. His strength is a compelling story that is much more important than fake scandals. From dropping out of high school to the star of a worldwide TV series, from a sad dad to a strong supporter, Rick's real-life journey is already intense enough without any embellishments from fiction. What can we figure out from this? First, let's talk about how important it is to know how to use the media properly in this age of fake news. Then, before you share shocking news about famous people, a moment to check the facts with reliable sources. Second, remember that behind every clickbait headline about a celebrity is a real person with real problems who deserves basic respect. Finally, Rick's strength in facing terrible loss and legal problems while building his future may serve as an example for us as we wrap up our look into the truth about Rick Harrison. I'd like to leave you with this thought. In a world where algorithms favor shock value over content, picking truth over clicks is a huge move. When we check before we share and try to understand before passing judgment, we take back our digital world from people who want to use our feelings to make money. Rick Harrison made a living by carefully figuring out the real value of things. Maybe it's time we did the same thing with the information we read and share, because truth is more valuable than gold or silver, and that's something we should protect at all costs. If you like this video, please consider joining and sharing it with others who care about finding the truth in a world where information is getting more complicated. Until next time, remember to question everything you hear and approach every story with both skepticism and compassion.